The kind of cherry on top was the top pitch got awarded this $40,000 safe note. Then I got this phone call like 3 days later, just out of the blue. And I had all these missed calls and I'd kind of taken a day. I was like, I just need a mental health day. It's been really full on. And I turned my phone off and I wasn't checking my emails. Then I got a call from Kathleen at Even Capital and she's like, I've been trying to get hold of you. And I was like, what? She's like, we want to tell you you won the safe note. And I just went, holy fuck.
Give me the elevator pitch on what PAM is.
PAM stands for Personal Admin Manager, and she takes care of the mental load. It's something that can basically go through all those awful school emails, all the app updates, all the football things, and you just throw it all to PAM and the AI makes sense of it. My biggest regret was, as a initially non-technical founder, not trying to actually build prototypes and no-code solutions myself. You just constantly hear that you need a technical founder, and you don't.
I asked this question to a lot of people and they aren't comfortable answering it. I feel like you will. Where do you see the future success of PAM?
When we can see...
Hey everyone, guess what? This is the very final episode of Season 4. Will we come back in Season 5? Let us know in the comments if you want us to come back. This thing takes a lot of time and money and effort from Jono and I. We love doing it, but should we come back? Let us know if you want to keep seeing this podcast. Let me know if you've seen every single episode, and if you have, drop it down in the comments below and tag me, and I might even take you out for a beer and say thank you, because this has been a crazy journey. This is 81 episodes, wrapping up Season 4 today with Nicole Redder. Nicole is the biggest bundle of joy and energy that I've met in a long time. She's just a phenomenal, amazing founder who is building something really cool in PAM. I'm going to let her explain what PAM is to you, because she does a really, really good job explaining it. But I can tell you, I literally signed up to the waiting list as soon as she left the building. And so I hope you enjoy this episode, and it's the final one. I'll speak to you at the end.
Kia ora. Thanks for tuning in to the We Fucking Love Startups podcast, brought to you by Talent Army.
The roles I've taken in my life have not been for money. They've all been for this is cool. This is going to challenge me. This is going to be different every day, which I think is why the whole kind of startup thing has always appealed. I was always like, I'm going to start my own business. I just need to figure out one that's A, going to keep me interested and passionate, and B, is going to make enough money that I can actually live a life off it. I don't need to be a billionaire, but it needs to be, financially viable. And so there's been
100 millionaire.
I mean, that'd be ideal. I told my husband, when I make the first mil, as in my salary, not the first mil for the business, he can then retire and just be a full-time dad.
Yeah, nice.
And he's counting down the days.
What does he do?
He is the general manager at a waterproofing company. So he was a builder for ages, and now he's kind of gotten old and a bit slow, and the body's kind of giving out.
What's his name?
Tyler.
Good on you, Tyler.
Yeah. And so he kind of got headhunted, and so now he gets to kind of more run the boys as opposed to actually being one of them, which is much kinder on the body.
Yeah, awesome. Well, it sounds like you've been preparing your whole life to be a tech startup founder, because being able to just jump at an opportunity, being able to live off nothing and make no money initially, being able to just figure shit out, and then now kind of the perfect symbiosis of being a tech founder, right?
Yeah. I mean, I didn't know what I was going to end up doing, but I knew I was going to start my own business and be my own boss and do something.
Why did you know that?
My father started his own business when he was 40, and then started many, many offshoots after that. So it's what I've grown up with. My grandfather, when he came back from World War II, started a household supplies in his backyard. So he had gravel and wood and massive trucks going back and forward down his driveway. And that turned into Edwards Mitre 10 that was in Lower Bay for 50 years. So I've kind of grown up in this environment where the norm is to run your own business. So I was the one who kind of broke the norm by going to university and getting a corporate job and kind of climbing the ladder. That was unusual in my family. And so I've always known that I would do a sidestep into running my own thing, but it was just kind of waiting for the right gap in the market or opportunity to be this is me, this is where I belong.
And so for people that haven't heard of PAM, how would you give me the elevator pitch on what PAM is?
So families are busier than ever, right? My kids' calendar is hectic. And the idea with PAM is that PAM stands for Personal Admin Manager, and she takes care of the mental load. So it takes a massive load of stress off families. And I mean, if you talk about sort of the technology side of thing, it's an AI-enabled personal assistant for your family. So something that can basically go through all those awful school emails, all the app updates, all the WhatsApp football things, all the physical birthday invitations, and you just throw it all to Pam and the AI makes sense of it, creates a shared calendar so that you and your partner and your wider village all know what's going on. So that invisible load isn't invisible anymore. We can all see what needs to be done, and people can chip in and lend a hand so that, what often, both parents, but often mothers end up being the primary caregiver, and they often end up juggling so many balls in their head. And humans were never meant to be these kind of, containing so many pieces of data and, basically being the PA for every single person in your family is insane on top of working as well. So that's the idea. The whole thing is I'm so sick of myself included and my amazing friends who are super talented, super successful. And the biggest problem we have is family admin. The thing we complain about is, shit, I forgot to order. There was a hungy last night and I had a friend message me go, oh my God, I didn't order one. My kid's spinning out. Have you got any spares? Parent fail. And it's it's not a parent fail. There's just too many fucking balls in the air.
Yeah, 100%.
That you have to drop some occasionally.
As I said before we started, right? I'm a dad week on, week off.
Yeah.
I'm a dad all the time, but I physically have them in my house week on, week off. And even that's hard, right? Because it's I'm on my own. I come home after I run a company. I've got a bunch of companies, and then I come home, and then I walk to RO Valley, and I have to switch off from boss to dad mode. And I get home and then I'm like, oh, I'm so tired. So I end up working as a dad until 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock at night. And then I sit down and look at emails from schools and do all these things. And I'm fucking exhausted. So it gets
tight in your bones, eh?
Yeah. And so then I feel like I just don't get the chance to be myself, And this is where I think lots of people are suffering from burnout these days, is because there is so much shit that we're doing. There's so many context shifts, throughout the day, and you don't get much time to actually just live in your own self anymore.
Yeah, and I know it sounds kind of cheesy, but actually really connect with your kids. I feel like I spend so much time coordinating my kids and screaming at them to get ready out the door, or, oh Jesus, it's another my son came home with 2 birthday invitations yesterday on the same day. Thankfully, they're at the same location actually, an hour apart. So I'm well, you can just stay there for 4 hours.
Perfect,
It's a whole lot of mini golf to do. Yeah. But it's just too much. And I want to actually be able to be I'm the crazy, silly, stupid mum. I've got ADHD, and so my kids are always telling me when I go to watch them, Mum, don't yell so loud. It's embarrassing. You make us laugh. And because I'm always the one who's doing cartwheels on the sideline and that kind of stuff. But I want to be able to be in that skin, not in the, oh shit, there's another 5 emails from school that I need to read and make sure that we've got, I don't know, whatever the gold coin or whatever the other thing is to sort out.
Yeah. What was the aha moment for you when you were this is what my product is going to be?
So I had the idea and I was sitting on it for a while and I was you know what, I'm just going to bite the bullet and I'm just going to invite 5 of my girlfriends over and just have a chat over wine, see what they think.
That sounds like the best user testing I've ever heard of.
Yeah, so I did. So I invited them over. I was like, hey guys, I want you to come over. I've got a business idea I'd like to take you through. I swear to God, it's not a marketing pyramid thing. There's no Tupperware, no face creams. And they were like, yeah, sweet. So they came over and I put up 2 slides. And one of them was, I don't know, it's a spreadsheet and I color coded a few things, kind of showing you how a calendar could look with what your kids are doing and what you're doing. And imagine if all your apps and emails kind of went directly into here. And they just spun out. They were like, is this ready? Is that a thing? Can I buy that now? And it turned into almost like a counselling session. People confessing how exhausted they are and how burnt out they are and how this is it's the final straw that completely topples everything over.
Yeah.
And so when I did that, I was like, whoa, shit, okay. But then I was like, wait a second, this is my group of friends who all have a very similar demographic, right? We all have relatively full-time careers and that kind of thing. I was like, and same age children. So I was like, okay, I took all that feedback and I was like, sweet, okay. And I posted something on it's called Mummies for Life. It's a Wellington Mums Facebook group. And I was like, hey, I'm putting
Is it spelled 4 with the 4 and LYFE?
I don't know. I don't think there's a Y.
I hope it is. I hope it's Mummies for Life.
Anyway. Oh, yeah, totally. So, overnight, I got 300 replies.
Really?
Yeah. And people were I got quotes and I was like, oh, I'm thinking of creating some kind of like shared family tool that, you know, makes sense of your stuff for you, and basically so you don't have to, you know, you can share the load, build a village around you, that kind of thing. And I got like people saying, I feel this in my bones. You know, please, I'm so stressed out. I need this in my life. When can I have it? Like, and like these really like really emotive responses. And when I got that, I was like, okay, sweet. This is it. This is what I'm going to start like working up a business plan. I'm going to start thinking about potential features and how this could all shape up. And that was when I was like, this is not just a me and my friends have a problem. This is like a universal issue.
Yeah.
And it's not just for mums. Like I did some focus groups with like at my husband's bequest with like dads as well. And I also did with like grandparents. And it's interesting. We all suffer, like this problem is universal, but the way we feel it is different. So for mums, our biggest issue is we feel burnt out and overwhelmed and like everything's on our shoulders, and like it's harder to share, to get someone to do something than it is just to do it yourself. And then talking to the dad side in this focus group, their top issue was we hate being nagged. They were like, you know, we don't know what's going on, and so we're always being hassled about, remember you've got to do this, remember you've got to do that. I was like, okay. But the second one was they hated seeing how stressed out their partners were. And they were like, we don't want them spinning out and being miserable because of all this crappy admin. We want to find a way to help them, but we don't have to do too much more work, but we definitely want to take a load off them. Which I was like, oh, cool. Okay, so there's like a kind of like there's a whole, it affects a lot of people. And, you know, when I spoke to like the Nana/grandma group, who were all like very funky boomers and stuff, right? They were sort of saying, we want to be involved and help our particularly daughters. We don't like seeing our daughters really struggling. Like that's quite heartbreaking for us. But also our lives are really important, and we're not willing to basically just give up our lives and be full-time nanas. And so it was cool kind of understanding where all these different people come from, because the thing with PAM is I don't care if the technology in the background is paper clips. Honestly, couldn't give a fuck as long as it solves this problem and lightens the mental load. And the main way you're going to do that, yes, PAM is really smart and does a lot of the mental admin for you, but the way you're really going to make a difference is by uplifting and showing what everyone's going on and building that village of support. Because we all lived in villages up until 100 years ago or whatever, and you can't do it alone. Like couples or individuals who don't have like close family living by, I don't know how they survive. Like it's just
well, I'm an Aussie. I don't have any family here.
Jesus.
And so and then got divorced. It was a very sudden. It wasn't my call. And then I was a single dad with 2 kids, like 8 and 5, and 3 companies, and no support around me whatsoever. And if it wasn't for my friends that rallied around me, like they say, you know, like single parenting is a village, right? Like you need a village. If it wasn't for them, I would have, I don't know where I'd be.
Got under.
Yeah.
But you've got these amazing people, right? So you have these amazing people, and they are your village. And I've got the same thing. Like, you know, a friend of mine, you know, they're my village. These amazing families who live like locally and stuff like that. But it's really hard to see where the gaps are. Like, you know, today could be the absolute worst shithouse day of my life. Like maybe I've got, I don't know, massive deadlines and hospital appointments or whatever. And my BFF who lives around the corner might literally just have a day doing nothing. But we don't know that that's going on, you know, unless you're communicating daily, and that takes its own effort. But if we can kind of have this little window into each other's lives, and she'd be like, hey, I can totally grab your kids from school today. I'm grabbing mine anyway. Would that be helpful? And I'd be like, Jesus Christ, that's completely taking me from spinning out to being like, okay, I can manage today. So it's finding ways to kind of go, hey, like, you need a village. How can we use technology to help us get back to that thing where we can actually like see over the fence what's going on and kind of provide that support? Because that, like, Jesus, I think life's hard, but imagining being a single parent without like immediate family.
Well, but even like I talk on this topic a lot, right? Because we've gone through a real paradigm change with grandparental support, where it's been over the last sort of 20 years that grandparents now dedicated a lot of the time to being parents and want to live their lives now. And it's not the same as like when my grandparents were around. They were around a lot when I was a young kid, and they were supporting my mum and dad, and my mum and dad were working all the time. And so these days, like my grandparents-in-law, we hardly saw them, and they lived 5 minutes down the road, you know. And that's because, I mean, to their credit, they were honest about it. They were like, we're young and we want to live our lives, you know. And it's definitely tough. But what I want to ask you is, like B2C play, right, is really hard, right? And so I want to talk about that. But what I want to ask you, why do companies and people, we spend all this money and time and resource building products to help us shift the dial 0.1% at work, but we don't do much for home?
It's insane, right? And that was part of like my sort of, the first thing I did when my life got really busy and really complicated is I went looking for a tool. And I was like, okay, there's 101 project management tools out there. Surely there's got to be something that can help me coordinate my family. And there just wasn't. And I was like, these are the same humans. Like, I'm the same human I am in the office as I am at home. How come I've got all these SaaS products that streamline things, that coordinate things, that make life so much easier? But at home, your options are a physical calendar, which is fucking insane, or you have, obviously did a whole lot of surveys, and then what the next most common thing is, you have your Google Calendar or your Apple Calendar, and you just shove everything into your own personal one. Like every kid's football game, every bake sale, every birthday party just gets shoved into, and then but then your partner might not be on the same calendar, and then you have work things, and then it's chaos. And I think that we need to start thinking that, being productive in a positive way, I'm not talking about like hitting milestones, but actually kind of making our lives easier, more seamless, shouldn't just be isolated to the office. You shouldn't just be your best self giving 100% in the office. It's like actually most of your life, and the reason you have a work is to have this life at home. Yeah. And it shouldn't be stressful, and it shouldn't be spending the whole time checking emails and freaking out because you've forgotten to give your kid $2 for the sausage sizzle or whatever the hell's on.
Yeah. I've definitely been there. I fed my kids dog food for school lunch once accidentally because...
How did you feed them dog food? What, do you think it was lunch and sausage or something?
No, it was like I get online groceries, and they gave us these little sample packs, and I shit you not, they looked exactly like little crisps or something in the packets. So, and I was like running one morning trying to get all my kids' school lunches ready and things, and then grabbed 2 of these sample packs thinking, oh, they're crisps, and just threw them in their lunchbox.
What were they?
They were dog pellets. And so I get this message from my daughter at like 12:30 saying, Dad, do you know that you gave us dog food? And I was like, oh shit, your brother's definitely going to have eaten that.
Did he?
So I texted my son and I was like, did you know it was dog food? And he said, yes. And then follow-up question, did you eat it? Of course. Me and all my friends tried it. I was like, oh my God, boys versus girls, hey.
That's kind of awesome that you've got a kid that'll eat anything. I mean, that's a massive one.
No, he'll eat dog food, but he won't eat, regular food.
Oh.
Yeah, that's kids.
Yeah, they suck.
I've heard about you through a variety of people in a variety of ways. we mentioned it before, I'm happy to say. I met a girl on Tinder who was talking to me about this amazing person that she worked for and did some work with. And I was like, oh, interesting. And I remember we were talking about it over a glass of wine. And then she followed up with a LinkedIn message and said, this is the product and this is the company. And then only like a couple of weeks or a couple of days later, I get a message from Marion from like Ministry of Awesome.
Yeah.
And so it's an exciting time for you because obviously Even Capital now and NZGCP
yep.
have decided to give you some funding, which is...
Yeah, and it's more than just kind of the funding, right? So it was, the way in which it happened was I joined the Electrify Accelerator, which is for female founders, and I think, I may be wrong, but it was like 100 startups with female funders.
Can I say that was one of the best conferences I've been to in 5 years?
It was good, right?
Yeah.
It was really good.
Talking about the recent Electrify Aotearoa conference for those that are listening. Yeah.
It was super good, and everyone should go to it. Like next year, it's amazing. But the Accelerator program, which is like 12 weeks to basically get you investment ready and do a whole lot of other amazing things in your business. And I think there's like 100, I may be wrong, it could be less, could be more, startups applied. 20 of us got accepted. And then we spent 12 weeks together kind of, learning from mentors, being exposed to always like talking to VCs and like really, really cool experience. I do feel like it's like pouring gasoline on a startup. Like I felt like I was running around with my ass on fire. Yeah. But the speed at which I got shit sorted was insane because I'm a real deadline person. If someone gives me a deadline, I will smash it. If I don't have a deadline, I'll flounder around.
What stage were you at before going into this?
So product-wise, I was at the same point. I kind of had my prototype and was doing bits and pieces. But I'd been working very much on the product and on the brand, because obviously brand's my background, but I hadn't done all the background stuff you need in terms to get investment. Like I didn't know what a data room was. I didn't know what a cap table was. I didn't know what a VC was. Like I came really green. And they actually got us to fill in a form at the start. And apparently, they didn't tell me till later on, I hit 11% of the things you need to in order to like be considered ready for investment for a VC.
Out of 12% total, right?
No. So I hit 11%. So I was like, hadn't even considered any of it. At that point, I had planned to bootstrap at that point as well. So it wasn't that I was completely naive to it. It wasn't part of my trajectory.
Yeah.
And by the end of the conference, I think I was around 95% or something like that. Over 12 weeks, like I'd just done a lot.
What was the biggest learning? Like, what was the game changer break for you?
I think the biggest learning was when I started looking at my financial trajectory and I looked at the difference having investment would make versus not having investment. So from day one, I'd planned to bootstrap. And I had planned...
How much was it going to cost you, can you say? Like
about $120K
to
get the product profitable and self-sustainable.
All right.
And that's like, I'm doing everything, right?
That's cheap, right?
Super cheap. Like that's literally, getting developers to work at a cheap rate and everything else is on me. And then I looked at what I could do with, like $400K of investment and how quickly the product could grow because I could go to market so much faster. So at the moment, the plan is to kind of open up to 500 families and then open up to 1,000 and then 2,000. I kind of have to gatekeep it until I'm like, right, everything's running smoothly in terms of like variable costs. And then as we kind of get more efficient, then we go, right, okay, we're ready to let in the next kind of cohort. So we actually will have sort of a waiting list system. But I was like, wow, with this investment, I can kind of open things up a lot faster and I can pay myself, which takes a lot of pressure off as a startup founder. But I can bring on staff. Like at the moment, I've got amazing people doing bits and pieces and pro bono and, someone on a contract here and all that. But I can bring on other people who actually own pieces of the business. Yeah. That it's not all on my shoulders. And I think, I'm a solo founder and that's intentional. And I'm really happy making all the decisions.
Why do you want to? Because this is contextual, right? Like a lot of people are like, you definitely need founders, and some people are like, you definitely need to be a solo founder. What's your take on why you chose to be a solo founder?
I have a really, really clear vision about where I want to go, and the skills that I need that I don't have are really easy to get in other people without them necessarily being an owner in the business. And then I keep, control over the direction. And, they say that the two main reasons startups fail is that either, you burn out or run out of money as well, or co-founders fall out. Yeah. And I was like, and I'm not saying I won't want a co-founder in the future. That is definitely something that I'd look at potentially. But at the moment, at this stage, and I run at 1,000,000 miles an hour and I don't want to have someone stopping and asking me for kind of signposts on the way. I just want to be able to kind of go straight at it, get things done, and then potentially later on if the right person comes along. But I also don't have the time or energy to find the right person. Like I feel like that's a full-time job in itself.
It is if you want to do it well.
Yeah, and and have this person, everyone says it's like a marriage. Absolutely, I think it is. And I don't have time to date and do all those sorts of things. I just want to get this product out to people and follow the vision that I've got.
12 weeks in, you realise that I'm here, I'm building this, I've learned a lot now.
And I do want investment.
Yeah, I do want investment.
Yeah.
And then, so how do you spend that investment?
Wow, so it didn't quite...
Well, actually, we didn't finish the story. So
you're
in this cohort.
I'm in this cohort, and the first thing we did was meet the other woman in the cohort. And I'd been in a, incubator before, and hadn't kind of met people who I thought were going to carry on with me, and kind of in the back end of my career, and the sort of, going forward, sorry. And I met some of these women, I was like, holy shit. Like, I've got a lot of experience in sort of business and corporate and bits and pieces, but there were women on the other end of these phone calls who were startups like me in the exact same position as me, who'd been CEOs, who had startups that had sold for $10 million, who had, were just epic women who were super open and honest and sharing their story and could like were educating me. And, you know, that's what I want, is I want to be challenged. You know, I'm not saying my thinking's the right way at all. I want someone to really push back on me and help me like broaden my thinking. And that's what these women were able to do. And I was like, shit, this is like, flag all the rest of it. Just meeting these other women in my cohort has just made this worthwhile. We got to the end of the 12 weeks and they announced who the 8 of us who got to actually pitch on stage to a room full of investors, which is what we were all kind of vying for. And I got that and I was like, cool, okay, I'm going to pitch on stage. Interestingly, I was absolutely shitting myself because I'm a really confident public speaker, but you've got 5 minutes to tell your entire story and convince a room full of investors you're the one that they might want to invest in. And then the kind of cherry on top was the top pitch of the day of the 8 of us then got awarded this $40,000 safe note. I didn't think I had a shit show because I totally rate the others in my cohort. And some of them are making hundreds of thousands of dollars already, have millions of dollars in the pipeline. And so I kind of did my pitch on stage. I was super stoked because the one person I wanted to talk to was Sarah from Even Capital. And she came straight over to me after I pitched and was like, we need to have a conversation. I was like, yes, okay, sweet. That's all I needed. Like, score, tick, done.
Even Capital is a capital firm specifically focused on female founders too, right? And
yeah.
So for people that don't
and then
know.
you kind of get an extra, I think you kind of get like an extra tick if your product supports women as well, which obviously PAM has a leaning towards. But then I got this phone call like 3 days later, just out of the blue. And I had all these missed calls and I'd kind of taken a day. I was like, I just need a mental health day. It's been really full on. Yeah. And I turned my phone off and I wasn't checking my emails. And I finally turned my phone on. I had all these missed calls and all these missed emails. I was like, what the hell? And then I got a call from Kathleen at Even Capital and she's like, I've been trying to get hold of you. And I was like, what? She's like, we want to tell you you won the safe note. And I just went, holy fuck. And she goes, And I was like, oh my God, I think I'm going to vomit. And she's like,
she said that, you said that.
I said that. And she was like, oh, that's good to hear that you're excited. Just so you know, you're on voice call, like they had me on audio in the whole room with all the other investors.
Oh, wow.
And I was just like flipping out.
Well, I feel like you're not the type of person that they wouldn't have known that up front.
No.
Like in 5 minutes of pitching, I can imagine your personality would have shone through straight away.
Yeah, totally. And so they were like, and they were kind of laughing and being like, oh, actually, you know, this is totally, you know, obviously you're thrilled about it, which is great. So cool.
I'm just going to clean this format up now. And
and I was like shaking. I was like, oh my gosh.
How did you win?
So the feedback I got was that they saw the problem as being, I clearly made universal. It's a really big problem across many, many people, and that I understood it and I understood the audience really, really well. A big part of it was also sort of the way in which I showed how we've really distilled down the problem and gone, actually, you know, there's 100 ways you could solve this, but let's actually get down to the single tiniest nugget of gold and actually do that really, really well and then support families. And so, yeah, the same thing happened. Like I got up on stage and I'd been told 3 times I was pitching after morning tea. And then the last speaker spoke before the morning tea break, and then the MC somehow skimmed across morning tea break and goes, and now we're going to have Nicole from PAM. And so I stood up and I was like, oh my God, I so wasn't ready for this. I thought I had 2 nervous wheeze left in me or something. And got up on stage. And again, the first thing I said was, oh my God, I'm totally shitting myself. I thought that I was on after morning tea. And everyone kind of laughed. I was like, well, here we go. And so...
But that's kind of good because you disarm people, right, when you're public speaking. And I think for people listening to this that are doing pitches...
Just be yourself. I swear to God.
100%.
And some of the feedback that obviously a big part of the Electrify conference was these pitches at the end. So much energy was put on these. We had to pitch them to all sorts of people in practice. And I got so much advice and feedback. And some of the advice I got from the most skilled, experienced people in the area was to actually memorize my script, which pulls out all my personality. Was to cut out some of the slides that had photos of my family and kind of had crazy anecdotes. And I just I took that feedback and I went, nah, I'm not going to memorize my script because that kills how I present.
You sound robotic.
Yeah, and you don't then connect with people, right? Because you're not being yourself. And I was like, if I forget one of my 20 like points I'm meant to hit because I haven't memorized their script. Fuck it. At least I sound like a human.
Yeah.
And that was part of it. They said that I really felt like it connected with people, which was really cool. I mean, at the time I was just in a complete blur of chaos while I was pitching, but afterwards people came up on like, that was super fun and, you know, really relatable. And I think that's super important is please just be yourselves. And my background is in brand, right? And the number of times I've gone to people and said, stop trying to be someone else.
Yeah.
People like you because you are you, your quirks, your weirdness, whatever it is. That's what makes you you. Don't try and sound like, you know, a big corporate or whatever.
So when VCs or when anyone are backing early stage founders, it's the person
Totally.
as much as the product, right? Even more so, right? And so if you're not putting your real facade like forward, taking all the masks off, taking everything off, not putting your veneer on to present, you know, then they're not seeing that person. And so I know so many founders that pitched for one product, didn't get funding for it, but the VC was like, I really like you, so next time you have an idea, come and see me. And they've got funding for that product. And so because they connected with them as a person, not necessarily the product. Yeah, congrats. Like, that's awesome. That's a really, really cool story.
Yeah, and then, I mean, there's a slight, and then I found out afterwards. So I'd shared...
Actually, let's just touch on, put a pin in this for a second and come back to it. What's a safe note for people that don't listen?
Oh, cool.
Don't
okay.
understand that.
So a safe note is basically a way for VCs to give you some money in the early days. I mean, you can use it for other reasons, but it's usually in the early days before you have a valuation for your startup. So getting a valuation for your startup is relatively complex and hard to do in the very early days when you're still kind of getting your feet.
Yeah.
And it's a way for them to kind of give you money with less strings attached. So they can give you money. It's a relatively simple contract. And what it is the promise of shares later. So the idea is that, you know, when I do a round, which I'm hoping to do in maybe August, September, I'm hoping to do an actual formal funding round, and then I get a formal valuation, then that money they gave me will then transfer into shares that they own in the business.
Cool. That's good explanation in there. You're definitely above 19% now. And
I had no idea what any of that stuff was, Yeah.
So then you said there was another little piece.
Oh, yeah. So obviously we had huge pressure to get these pitches right. Like I must have had to take my pitch, 10 people I must have taken through it. Like it was such a process. And every time you get feedback, obviously, and some of it's conflicting. But a really big part of it was that we had to get our decks into the Electrify Accelerator people 2 weeks before the conference. Mm-hmm. And anyone who's been in startup knows that, especially early stage startup, shit changes drastically in 2 weeks. Like drastically, especially when you're trying to like tell people like your traction as much as possible. And so I kind of got my deck in, and I've worked in events and I was like, that's a bit of a false deadline, whatever. Yeah. And then a week out, I took my advisor, Spice, through my pack.
Shout out Spice. I love Spice. I love most of your advisors, or all of your advisors.
I know they're good, like good humans, right?
Yeah.
And so he was like, those numbers, that's bullshit. He was like, you know, like the numbers I had, like the audience size and stuff was right. But I was kind of going, oh, you know, get 10% of America. He was like, come on, you're like, you'd be the fastest growing company in the world if you got that in a year, sort of thing. So we revised some stuff and actually made it, you know, and he helped me kind of really put things into perspective, which is great. And it's still good numbers, still great numbers at 1%, and changed some things quite significantly. And so I sent these through to the accelerator, and they were like, nah, you can't change your deck. It's a week out. I was like, and I went back relatively firm-handed and was like, come on, guys. You've like held our hand the whole way. Don't let us trip at this finish line. And they were like, hard no. And I was like, fuck that. So it took me 5 minutes, went online, figured out who the AV operator was for the St. James.
Oh, I love this.
You know, called them up, didn't say who I was or who I wasn't. And I was just like, hey, you guys are doing the Electrify conference. Are you doing that pitch thing with like the 5, you know, like 8, 5? And they're like, yeah, that's awesome. I'm like, hey, one of them changed. Is it a problem if we send you through an update? And he's like, nah, not a problem. Here's the email address. Flick it through to the text supplier, emailed it through. They emailed me back saying, yep, all sorted, edit the deck, done. And so that took 5 minutes. Then I went back to the guys at Electrify. I was like, hey, I really hope this doesn't step on anyone's toes, but like I'm a startup, I don't follow rules. This was too important. I just kind of did it.
I love that so much.
Yeah. And I was like, I'm sorry, but, and I'm a big believer, like my mother is the biggest rule breaker you've ever met. Like her personalized plate is bad Gma because she just doesn't follow rules. She's just like, if it's a rule, unless it's not hurting anyone, I'm not following, you know, I'm going to do what I want to do. And so she always said to me since I was tiny, if there's a rule that doesn't make sense and it doesn't hurt anyone to break it, fuck it. And so I was like, and so then I went and told some of the other startups, I was like, hey, you can totally switch your deck out. Here's the email address for the guy. And then that story got back to the VCs. And that was one of the things that helped get me over the line.
Well, that's like, for me, that's amazing, right? Because how many people just give up so easily, right? And then as a founder, right, like you
hit walls.
Yeah, you're constantly problem solving, right?
Yeah.
And you just need to be able to think through it, right? And just move forward. And so
there's always a way around shit, you know?
I love that so much. I think that should be a case study on #GetShitDone, right? So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and I've, it's funny because like I mentioned, I work with Kite, who are like epic, and, I couldn't have got the product to where it is now. Like they've really helped me push my thinking on it. But I push them hard. Like I make them break. They have systems and ways they do things. And I'm like, nah. I'm a scrappy startup. I don't have that kind of money. And like their nickname for me is Scrappy because I'm constantly like, nah, I can make that with like a Word document and an Excel and I'll just put an API in here and that'll work. And they're like, oh, that's not really how we do things. I'm like, it'll be fine. Yeah. And like, that's just kind of how you have to be.
So when did the AI play come in? Was that straight away or?
I guess I wasn't calling it AI, but the concept was there from day one.
Yeah.
So the concept was going, how do we take the initial, so when I had this really big idea with all the features and all the bells and whistles, and then I had to like, Kite kept pushing me, Rob Holmes kept pushing me going, that's awesome, make it smaller,
yeah.
refine it. And the idea I came up with was called the bucket experiment, which was literally going, actually the thing that would be really useful is if I could have a bucket and all the shit that gets thrown at me and my family just went into this bucket.
Yeah.
And then it came out the other end in an organised fashion. That would be really helpful.
Explain the organised fashion to
someone. So you're getting emails from school, you're getting WhatsApp updates, you're getting all the stuff, and then it comes out the other way and it just tells you the information you need to know, where you need to know it in a date order.
Yeah.
And the first experiment we did of that, I set up some fake Gmail accounts and I had families flick everything to a fake Gmail account. I had a Word document that just was like bullet pointed, and I had a human in the background who was our friend who actually went through, read all the emails, and then put it into this like organised, like bullet pointed calendar for people. And people who were involved in this trial were like, fuck, this has saved me like 2-3 hours in my week. I don't have to call my husband every morning to discuss what we're doing. So the part was that human in the background, right? That human in the background that was making sense of everything. I thought that we could get some of that doing automation, and then we would probably still need quite a bit of human involvement. But what Paperguide did is they started working with AI from the get-go. They paid someone to work with AI. I'm not paying for it. So they were like, we see real opportunity in this. And now the AI is doing almost all of that, and we just have a human come in and QA kind of edge cases. Yeah. You throw stuff at it, and it can make sense of so much stuff, and can do amazing things now. You can pick up your phone and say, "Hey Siri, show me Pam's events," and then you can talk to Pam and say, "Hey Pam, I need to get my laundry washed," and you'll get an email saying, "Yep, the local laundromat's been contacted. We can pick it up tomorrow, and it'll be dropped back to you in 2 days. Just reply yes, and it's sorted." Like it's amazing what we can just take the load off people with this AI.
It's kind of my sexual fantasy to have something like this in my life, just to help me. That's all I want, you know. Yeah, that's all I want. And so
and
shout out to Rob and the team at Paperkite. Love that team. Rob's, as we said before the show, Rob is an amazing human being.
Yeah, he's literally won awards for being a good human. Like, who has an award just for being a good human?
And Priya, do you know Priya?
We've kind of crossed paths a bit. I think her and I might be like secret soulmates, but we haven't actually spent a lot of time.
She's also should win awards for being a good human.
She did just win awards.
Did she?
Yeah, for
she did. I saw.
Like their staff experience. Like they basically just treat their people super well.
Yeah. Well, shout out to Paperkite there. So this is really exciting, right? And then so obviously there's some hype now. Do you feel pressure? Are you excited? Like, talk me through how you're thinking.
I feel excited. I think, like I said, with the the $40,000 in the safe note. I mean, $40,000 for a startup is great, but it's not going to completely change the trajectory of my business. But what it is it's going, hey, these people that for a job they assess whether an idea and a person has what it takes to go the whole way. And they chose you. They were like, we're putting our chips on you. We think that your idea and you is the one to back. And I'm like, whoa. And so what that means is I now have that kind of credential that other investors and obviously even Capital and NZGCP hopefully will come on board with my first funding round, because they've actually said, we believe in you. We think you've really, you've got what it takes. So that's what I take into. I go, A, the vote of confidence that it's not just me kind of, batting my own drum, and B, that this now means that actually I will get investment. I mean, if I don't get investment, I am still doing this. There is no way that PAM will not be in families' hands, but it'll just be a longer, harder slog.
When do you forecast that's in families' hands?
September.
Yeah. And what do you need to do until then?
So we are in a beta trial at the moment with some families. And so what we've done is, obviously small budget. I was like, let's just build the bit we don't know. We don't know what it, we don't know exactly how it works. Families haven't used before. Let's not worry about login. Let's not worry about accounts. Let's not worry about, and so we basically got rid of all the bits and pieces that you usually would have in an app that we know we can do, and have just built the core of it, the back end, the technology. That's the guts
everything
of it.
else is templatable, right? Like you can find all that stuff easy.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I was like, let's just do that. So that's what we're testing at the moment, and then we just kind of need to slam on like the kind of the bookends, right?
Yeah.
The kind of
lipstick.
Yeah. Or and the stuff that you kind of have to have, like you have to have security. Obviously, we're talking about like kids movements, but all that stuff we know we can do. At the moment, we're just testing the guts of it, and the guts of it really is in the back end. Like the user experience is 2 screens. It's like painfully simple, and it's like that for a reason. I don't want anyone to ever have to use like a molecule of brain injury and energy to understand PAM.
Yeah.
Like it takes the thinking away for you. You literally open it and it tells you what you need to do on every day, and that's it.
Yeah. Have you met Erica Palmer? She's the founder of Coupler.
No, but I saw your interview with her. Yeah, and there's definitely some similarities.
I'd love to connect you two, because I think you guys would definitely be able to share stories, right? She's obviously focused on the relationship side of what you're trying to, and you're solved on the more operational side of freeing up time.
But in her interview, she was talking about how you have to fix the operational stuff before you can fix the next thing. And that's what I'm doing. I'm going, you have to fix the operational stuff before you can go, actually, I have brain space for other things, that loss of identity, or that finding, rediscovering what I'm passionate in. You can't do that when you're just drowning in the weeds.
I often talk about, like, I used to paint a lot, canvases, and I often say, if I only had time to paint more, or if I had time to just hang out with my kids more.
Yes, absolutely, getting back more of those like passions and hobbies. But what if you just didn't feel rushed and overwhelmed?
I physically went through a transformation, right, to be a better father with my kids. After I got divorced, I was like, you have to reflect. I got divorced. I wouldn't say it was my chosen or my fault, but I had to reflect on it and say, all right, well, what did I do wrong in this situation? And my thing I did wrong was I was just never around. I was busy working all the time, and I wasn't a great parent. I wasn't a great partner. And so what it does do is it gives you a chance to reflect. And I was like, well, I'm going to finish work every day at 3:00 on my kids' week and just go home with my kids and hang out with my kids and not look at work. And so I did that for years, and I figured out how to do it, and it meant that I worked extra in the other weeks. But then as my kids got older, it just gets like they want to hang out with you less, if I'm honest. But
Wait, how old are your kids? When do I look forward to that?
16 and 14.
Oh, okay, I've got a few years of still being smothered. Okay.
Yeah. But they have a fuckload more things that they're doing now, right? And so and
it's more important to be engaged now.
Yeah, and it's like now is at the critical time for me to understand like what's happening with their schools, like their activities. Like my daughter's tramping all the time with like these Queen Charlotte walks or whatever they're called. She does. She's in debate club. She's in netball. She coaches netball. She does this, and my son's like
eating dog food.
Exactly, and so it's a stressful situation like being a parent these days, and I think if you can give people back 3 to 4 hours a week. Like that is just gold.
And it's not like just 3 to 4 hours of randomness. It's take 3 to 4 hours away of like
shitty admin.
Yeah, shitty stuff.
Yeah.
Like the stuff that stresses you out, the stuff you're like, because I got to be one of the like initial prototype families, right? And I'd get an email from school about some obscure thing in
school emails are the worst.
They suck. And I'm on the board at school, so I'm not even meant to say that, but they suck. Yeah. And like I'd get this email about some obscure thing that I had to do some obscure thing for as well, and I just go, see it, and flick it to Pam, and it's gone. Oh. It's out of my brain. I don't have to hold on to it until, because Pam also does the thinking for you, right? So if you had something like, I don't know, school camp come up in your like kids at school camp, then like a week beforehand, Pam will go, hey, have you checked that you've actually got all the items you need for school camp, like camping bags, so you don't actually trip over.
Yeah.
So Pam, or you've got a kid's birthday party, then a week beforehand, Pam will say, hey, have you RSVP'd to that party and thought about buying a gift? Here are some ideas for 7-year-olds and things like that. So I just don't have to use up brain space on it. I just open my calendar and go, oh, there's something I need to do. Sweet. I don't kind of go, oh my God, I forgot we've got that thing tomorrow. Now we've got to hustle because we haven't organised shin pads for football season starting or whatever it is.
Yeah. I run a really complicated, shitty whiteboard methodology at home that doesn't work.
Yeah, because then what happens if someone asks you what you're doing on Thursday next week when you've got the kids at 4 p.m? You're like,
I call my kids and I say, can you look at the whiteboard?
yeah, like that's nuts.
Yeah. It's ridiculous, like how we get by and how we manage. And I have my ex and I have a shared calendar that we use, and we try to manage things through the shared calendar.
Yeah. And it's messy, right? Like, then, and also, so the, not for MVP, but for very soon after, there'll be kind of a functionality in PAM where you kind of, tag someone in something. So like, okay, you're in charge of this birthday party or whatever. And then that person has to accept it. And you're like, okay, well, that now is no longer in my calendar. That's just in their calendar. So you can kind of go, I want to see everything I have on, and what you have on will overlap with your kids, but you don't necessarily need to see all the things that your X is managing for the kids, because that just takes up more brain space. It's actually not your responsibility.
Yeah.
If you want to click into the kids' calendars, you can and see everything they've got on for the week. You don't have them, but actually it's kind of going, I don't need to juggle everyone's balls.
Yeah.
That sounded weird.
Especially when you're talking about my ex. No, I 100%. I definitely think you and Erica, I might connect you too, because I think you guys are there, have a great conversation. How do you, as a like non-technical founder, found a technical product that has like, it is like a really engine. It has an
really?
engine.
Yeah. I also, I've stopped calling myself a non-technical founder.
Yeah.
I am a technical founder. I just don't write code.
Yeah, good.
So, I went and created prototypes by, in a couple of hours, I taught myself how to use Made.
Yeah.
And I linked up like 3 APIs and I had a prototype working.
Yeah.
I understand.
Well, I could find you a job now if this doesn't work out. Just
sweet. As long as they're happy for me to make all the decisions.
Yeah.
And I also, and I understand the engine behind what we're building. And, I've drawn the flow of how all the different tools work together and how we instruct them. And so I think people need to stop saying that they're not a technical founder. If you have your fingers in the technology, if you really understand it and are having every conversation with your developer, you are a technical founder. What I did find difficult though was in the early days was going, okay, I need to decide on things like tech stack and that kind of stuff, and you get conflicting information everywhere. And I was like, who do I trust? And so that's when I had to kind of have conversations with a few different people who had kind of been down the same path. So I think you become a technical founder. I'd say I would have started as a technical founder, but now I would say I am.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. It's daunting though for some people, right? Tech stack, right, is really, really daunting. And you get a lot of people that pitch tech stacks at you because they personally have a vested interest in wanting to play with that tech stack, right? And so I encourage anyone listening to this that is starting out as a non-technical founder, as you've described it, don't believe the first person that said.
And my biggest piece of advice is go and look at the no code options. There are so many tools out there now where someone who doesn't have technical experience can build themselves MVP or at minimum a prototype within a couple of hours.
Yeah.
And you I think people think you have to have, an absolutely polished app. You don't. You need to you need to have a solution to a problem. People don't give a shit how you solve it. Just have a solution. And if that happens to be on a spreadsheet or that happens to be, like paper clips and paper, great. Just first test out what your problem and solution are and then figure the technology out.
Yeah, I had James from Henry on the podcast. I'm not sure if you heard that episode.
Not that one, no. But I will.
He pretty much just had a spreadsheet behind the scenes and a front end, and everything was connecting to a Google Doc or whatever.
Yeah.
And we just basically bullshitted our way through it, right? Because it was like we didn't have the capabilities to build a really complex back end, and they proved their product, and then they were like, now we can build it, right? And so
and now you're not wasting time building something, the number, obviously I've worked in digital before, and the number of products I've seen be built that cost hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars, that then end up with the most minute number of users. Because instead of actually testing the solution first, they built the product first.
Yeah.
You know, and you're so much better to spend that time doing experimentation, to like just test a little tiny thing, you know. But, you know, we're talking about doing some really cool stuff. It's like, sweet, well, let's build that on the side using something like Made,
yeah.
and see if people actually like it. And if they don't, I don't then need to spend $20,000 building that feature.
What tech stack did you choose?
So see, now I'm absolutely going back on what I said, because I had this amazing relationship with Paper Kite, like we've talked about, and I had said this is what I want to do for my experiment. Like this is, and so what we agreed, I went and did a no code experiment and went, yep, this has blown me away. Families are like losing their shit over it. Let's figure out how we build this. And so they were going to go away and do kind of like a POC, like go and do some tech testing to see if actually we could build this engine that we wanted. We kind of haven't necessarily discussed what the front end would be, whether it's a progressive web app or native or Flutter and all those kinds of things. But in the meantime, one of their top developer, who's so good, he works out of Vancouver and I think he snowboards and mountain bikes half the time, was like, oh, I've got a couple of days. And he went and basically built an iOS front end.
Yeah.
And then, silly enough, showed it to me. I was like, whoa, that's just about what I want. So that's where we've ended up going, which thankfully is where I think we should have gone. And so what we've done is we've pretty much got an Apple app with a really clever engine that could attach to any front end.
Yeah.
And so what we'll be going out with initially is an Apple app.
Well, I feel like, because most people have iPhones, right?
Yeah, it's like 3/4 of parents in New Zealand have iPhones or something. So I'm really sorry for the Android people, but it's something we will, very quickly Android will come behind, or a progressive web app or something like that. But that's what we've ended up with, is we've got this engine back end, which is, using some third-party technology as well as some of our own. And then we're pulling that through into, iPhone app, which is literally 2 screens.
Yeah.
Really simple.
I love that though. I love that. Well, that's like you don't want to overcomplicate life.
No, but it's interesting because it's not 2 screens because there's not a lot to do. It's 2 screens because we've gone, unless this adds significant benefit to reducing mental load, I don't want it in there.
Yeah.
And so like you can click through and find more information and that kind of thing.
That's hard to do as a first-time founder though, right? Because a lot of the time people get caught up on everything that they could build.
And that's where I started. And that's absolutely when I was like, I can think of all these ways to solve all these problems, and I had shared grocery lists, and I had notes, and I had all sorts of other bits and pieces in there. And that's the real gift that I think working with Rob gave me, is he really challenged me on my product strategy and really made me. He just kept pushing me away and going, nah, that's great. Make it smaller. Make it smaller. And then now what we've ended up with is so much stronger.
Awesome. So I feel like I asked this question to a lot of people and they aren't comfortable answering it. I feel like you will. Where do you see the future success of PAM? Like, talk me through about your fuck yeah, we made it moment, and how does it look like? 10% of America, obviously. But.
Yeah, clearly 10% of America. I think, so the way that PAM, the go-to-market strategy for PAM is that you build a village of support around you, but you do that by inviting friends and family. So they then get like a free window into PAM, right? And so it has this kind of viral organic growth.
Yep.
And so I'll know that PAM is really doing an amazing job for families when I don't have to pay marketing, and I actually haven't. So far we've got nearly 1,000 families on board and we haven't done any marketing, just word of mouth. What it's going to do is...
So you got 1,000 families in the wait list?
Yeah. And that's without doing any marketing, right? Just from word of mouth. And I'll know that PAM is smashing it when it just keeps growing and growing and growing, because people are finding real benefit in it. And also when we can see, part of what we're going to do with PAM is go, hey, at this, how much time do you spend on, family admin? How much stress does this cause you? And then a month later, benchmark that. And then 6 months later, benchmark that. And when we can see people's happiness actually increasing and their stress levels decreasing, I'll be like, yeah, fuck yeah. This is making a systemic change in the way that we manage our families.
So you're definitely very purpose-driven then, right? So
I mean, obviously,
profit's great.
Yeah, I mean, and that comes with it. Like, if you nail the product and really serve people, then you're going to make money, right? And, but like I've said, money's never been my key driver. I want to make enough money so I can bring a team on, and so that they can start really owning certain parts of it, and we can make it a better product consistently. But, I think my husband's mark is when he no longer has to work. So let's put that as a goal.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah, and when my kids, when I can do like a beach holiday once a year, like a Fiji or something once a year would be great.
Yeah, awesome. Do you? So, what's your background, Māori?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I whakapapa to Mōpoko, which is based out of the mighty Levin.
Oh yeah, nice. My kids are Hamilton. Yeah. King's Country. Actually, one thing that I want to talk to you about while we're on the subject of Electrify Aotearoa, there was a really interesting debate, which I've talked about on the podcast before, with Brooke and Serge, which I was fascinated by. Like, I didn't see all of it actually because I had to step out, but everyone's played it back to me 100 times. And so it was, for people that didn't see it, I don't know, hadn't heard of it yet. Brooke got Serge on stage and in a panel and said, "Hey, you told me that you would invest in us because I'm a female and less risk averse," and I'm paraphrasing.
More risk averse.
Yeah, more risk averse.
Yeah.
Sorry. And then she was like, "What do you think about that?" And Serge was like, "Oh, well, the data, says," and then almost doubled down on it a little bit, right? And
yeah.
So, I mean, it was a brave conversation from both of them, and I know that they both went in really respectfully of each other's, time and energy on that, and so it was great. But it's led to really interesting conversations.
Yeah.
So I want to ask you, like, has it been harder thinking about starting a startup as a female founder, and then as a Māori female founder? Like, is it harder? Is it easier?
I mean, I don't know any other way, right? Like, I've only got my own lived experience. And as you've probably gathered from my personality, I kind of go in, I run a million miles an hour at everything. So I don't think I've necessarily experienced it. I think a lot of these things are in hindsight though, right? So maybe at the moment I can't see it. Maybe in 10 years' time I'll be able to look back and go, maybe if I was a man that would have gone differently. But I also think naivety sometimes is an amazing tool. That I don't go into anything thinking I'm a female founder or I'm a Māori female founder. I go in going, I've got a fucking good idea.
Well, I feel like this is what it should be, right? Like, you're a founder.
Yeah.
With a fucking good idea.
Yeah.
And that's all that matters to me, right?
Yeah, totally. And I was talking to a startup founder the other day who's doing amazing things called it's called Peers, and basically they're creating a database for the rainbow community to know who is safe in the medical industry to have communication with, because there's really horror stories out there, right? And she was telling me that she felt like she had to dress in a certain way to look less queer when talking to certain people. And I was like, but do you want to work with someone who would judge you for looking more queer?
Yeah.
And she's like, no. I'm like, so fuck them. Like, it's a really good way to weed people out. Just be yourself. And if they're not willing to come on board, then that's their loss. Like, I kind of...
Because you want more than money from a VC. You want a team to support you. You want your referrals. You want their tribe and their village as well. And so I think, like, if someone truly gets you at your core, they will bend over backwards to help and support you, right? And so
and there is definitely some things that kind of, you kind of go, oh, that's a bit weird. One of the VC firms, I'm not going to say which one it is because I can't say definitively from memory. It's one or the other, but they have a female fund. Great. Okay. That money just goes to female founders, but it's a really small portion of their overall fund. And what happened, a startup that I know went in, spoke to someone, and they were like, oh, yeah, great. We think this is a good idea. We're going to shoot you off to the female fund. And I was like, why can't it just be that you're just a founder and maybe a certain percentage of the overall budget has to be allocated to women? Why do you now just get palmed off to this little tiny fund over here because you're a female founder? I feel like they're trying to do good, but they're actually making it worse.
Yeah, I agree. Like, I feel like this conversation topic comes up all the time, and I just hope we get to a place where
just weigh things on their merit, man.
Exactly. It doesn't matter. I don't care who you fuck, who you pray to, what your colour skin is.
Just weigh everything on its merit. Like, it doesn't matter what your ethnicity is or your gender or your sexual preference. If there's a great idea and the person behind it you think has the guts to take it the whole way, fund them.
Yeah, 100%. And for what it's worth, scientifically proven that men are taking on more feminine traits and women are taking on more masculine traits now anyway, right? So the whole fucking myth that women are more risk adverse and, that's bullshit, right? So,
yeah, and there's stats are there around, the fact that women founders, if you do invest in them, make more money back and stuff because they do take risks, but maybe they measure them differently or what, to be honest, different personalities, you may choose a male founder who's super risk averse and a female founder who's very into risk. You just can't stereotype, I don't think.
No, I agree 100%. So on this season, I'm not sure if you've been watching along. If you haven't, no one's perfect. And
I've started.
Thank you. Join the club.
I binged 4 last night.
Nice. What was your favourite one?
I did really like the one with Erica from Coupler, because obviously she's in a very similar B2C type space, and
B2C's hard. You folks need to get together and start a little support group.
Yeah, but also there's lots of other ways. There's lots of ways around it. We're also looking at how we can sell PAM into corporate as a employee care scheme and things that. And there's lots of ways you can kind of find different ways to get income clip tickets in multiple ways.
And honestly, I think B2C is hard because it hasn't been proven here in New Zealand. So you guys get to prove it, right? You get to go on that journey and show what's possible.
Yeah, and I'm kind of, I started without a product. I started with an idea and I made a brand. And without having anything in market, I've already got nearly 1,000 families on a wait list. B2C, especially depending on your market, mums talk. There's communities out there and they talk. And I'm going, actually, this is... I put one post up and I get 100 people signing up. It depends. If you're clever with it, it's not that hard.
I have a question for you that's come from a previous guest, and that is so much consumer software is designed really, really poorly. And this person has a vested interest because they're a designer. But how much thought and feeling do you put into the design of your product and the user experience over just the functionality of building this engine?
Massive, because the purpose of PAM is to reduce mental load. So if you have to think, then it's not working. Yes, I want to be aesthetically pleasing, and it is, but the main thing is that you shouldn't have to click around a whole lot of buttons to figure out what you need to do. I think too often. Do
we have a screenshot of it? We're going to put one right here in my hand here. And so this camera is now showing a screenshot.
Nice. I think way too many products try to be too many things. The products that really do well with consumer products are the ones that do one thing really fucking well. Yeah. Think of Slack. Or, I think if you're trying to solve a problem, solve that problem. Don't try and create every other feature that there could be. Do one thing really well, really deep, as opposed to doing a whole lot of things really shallow. So I think that's where design's super important, that you actually, the UX has as much input as the technology. Yep. Because otherwise it's kind of, what is it, the tail wagging the dog or something, because the most important part is actually I want that the engine is super important, but people using it don't give a shit what's happening in the background. They just care about what they actually get in their hand. Yeah. And I want people to be able to pick up PAM, know what they've got on, not drop any balls, not have the stress that things are slipping through the cracks, and not have to read a million emails. So yes, the engine is almighty and does all these things, but the important part is actually I've got 2 screens in PAM. That's how simple it is.
So where do families that are listening to this now and are like, oh my God, I want this, where do they go to sign onto the wait list?
So it is at mypam.nz. All you need is your email address and your name. That's it. And then we will be doing a staggered onboarding. So the earlier you sign up, the earlier you get access to PAM. So the first families who signed up, we'll probably open it up to kind of 50 families in September, and then maybe another 100, and then maybe 500, and we'll kind of grow the number of families we have on board as we make sure everyone's having the experience we want them to.
All I had is bribe you to get early access.
Pretty much. I have had some pretty amazing suggestions. So,
you brought donuts today.
I did.
You are bribing me. So
yeah, no, I legit do that because I'm like, sweet, I want like really good angles, like the best edits. So I always bring donuts.
Hey, and so then what's the question that you would like? Because You are the lucky last person on season 4. You're going out with a bang on PAM.
Yeah.
And so it's probably going to be a question that I'm going to ask in season 5.
Okay.
So you're not going to know who it is.
Okay.
I don't know who it is yet.
Yeah.
But what's a burning question that you would like to ask?
What's your biggest regret from your first year of startup?
Great. Now I want you to answer that question.
Okay. What would be my biggest regret? I think my biggest regret was, as a initially non-technical founder, not trying to actually build prototypes and no-code solutions myself. I think I could have got probably to the point where I probably could have got investment just off my own bat using some of these really great tools. You just constantly hear that you need a technical founder, and you don't. You can get in there with these tools and you can make some massive headway. And I think that's my biggest regret, was thinking I had to get an agency to do the things, I couldn't do them. And I've figured out I can now use Figma, and I do my own designs. I can do just about anything you can imagine now. And I absolutely could have probably built prototype and maybe MVP off some of these tools, and then saved all the money for like the really shiny bits later on.
I can tell you last week I built an MVP just purely in ChatGPT.
And I keep hearing that. People are like, oh, I just talked to ChatGPT, got some code, got it to do a thing, 5 minutes later, we had like a POC. And I'm like, like it's like, just go out there and play with some of these. Just play with some of these tools. Some of them are awful and you do need a developer. And then some of them are really built just if you can set up your iPhone, you can do one of these tools.
Yeah, cool. Well, I'm glad that developers are no longer listening to this episode.
No, they have their place. There's definitely a lot of stuff I couldn't do, but definitely if you're just testing an idea, you can absolutely, scrap something together. It doesn't matter how scrappy it is.
Hey, well, I'm really looking forward to see what happens with PAM. Head out to mypam.nz where you can sign up to the waitlist and hopefully start getting some hours back in your day, start feeling a little bit more energized about time with your family and your kids. So, hey, it's been an absolute pleasure chatting to you. So thank you so much for coming on.
Awesome.
And all the best, hey?
Yeah, thank you.
Well, we are finished for season 4. Can you believe it? 81 episodes. How many episodes this season? I'm not even sure. I've lost count. It has been an absolute joy chatting with Nicole today. I feel like she brought the energy to just leave on a bang. Like that moment where she emailed her slide, like her deck, to the AV company. Holy shit. I hope more founders just have her get up and go and just no holds barred approach to life, because that's how you win, right? That's how you win. And so look, share your favorite memory with me on this season in the comments. Send it to me, share it with your friends. This has been a joy to make, and so we're going to take some time off and think about season 5 and whether we're going to come back for season 5 or not. So let us know if you want us to come back and if we have to come back. Otherwise, it's been an amazing journey and we really appreciate it, and I hope you enjoyed every episode.
This podcast is produced by John O'Tucker from Empire Films.